Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day and wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world. As always, thank you so much for engaging with our content. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows, and all of your support. And talking about support, I definitely want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Book Creator, EduAid, and Peelback Education, for believing in our mission to bring you some amazing conversations that will continue to help us grow within our education space and help us grow also professionally and personally. And I'm really excited to welcome these two wonderful young men that are here today, Almar and Max, who are joining us. And we're going to be talking about a great project that both of them are working on. So I am going to go ahead and welcome you first, Max. Max, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great.
Thank you so much. Almar, how are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. Really excited to be on this podcast and looking forward to our talk.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to get this conversation going because I can imagine that all my audience members right now that are catching this on video are saying, whoa, wait a minute. This is a little different from a lot of the guests that we normally see as far as age is concerned. But like I said, when I hear about something great and I hear about some wonderful projects and just things that are happening within the ad tech space, I'm just thankful that I get the opportunity to kind of jump on that. And I want to amplify your work and your voices. So, Almar, go ahead and give all our audience members a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education or edtech space, I should say.
Mhm. Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Almar. I graduated from a classical school where I actually taught violin students. So I was a violin teacher. I had 60 current students. So I have a little bit of background as teaching in high school. Then I moved to UATX where I started learning in college. I'm a sophomore now, 19 years old. But I'm also part of this school called Alpha, where they use technology to teach students 2 hours a day. And I'm working on a lot of projects there, which is where I am right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Almar and Max. How about you? Give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space.
Yeah, of course. So I moved to US 4 years ago from Belarus. There's a relatively small country in Europe, and even there, I've noticed a really um, interesting shift in education because when I was in ninth grade, I've completed the math course for a full year in only 3 months. It was math and physics. So, and my teachers there in my school, they didn't really accept it as a fact, and they were really critical about it. So even even when I was a kid, I was noticing this that something is wrong in the education, and actually the curriculum that kids is doing for 1 year can be completed much faster. So, and when I moved here, as Almer said, I'm also a part of this Alpha school, and their way actually really inspired me and showed me the other side of how the education can look like if you use AI, because it wasn't it wasn't any AI back then. So that was my passion to actually to show students and teachers that it is much simpler and there are other ways to learn things.
Excellent. No, and that is a wonderful conversation to start off with, and especially when you reached out and getting to know a little bit about the project that you're working on. But just to hear you right now, and especially within your age demographic, for myself, I know Almar, you mentioned you're a sophomore, right now, and then of course you're an alpha fellow also as well, and you're a founder. I mean, at 19 years old or as a sophomore, many students are still trying to figure out what their major is or what their minor is, or just kind of what road it is that they're going to be taking in life. So most students your age are not doing what you and Max are doing right now. So Almar, I'll start off with you. What is it that you saw within your education experience that you simply could not ignore and said, you know what, there has to be a different way, a different thought process, a different way of bringing education to students. So we're all genuinely curious to hear that from you.
Yeah. Well, one of my first experiences, I'll start out in high school, was that teachers would always give my essay back 3 weeks later. And sometimes uh, I might have a test and I don't get any feedback from teachers back before the test. So I'll make the same errors on tests. And this was an annoying problem during school. But I realized that I don't really think it's the teacher's fault, is the fact that teachers have so much homework that they have to work on, that I realized there must be a way to do this better. Because as a student, I suffered, and teachers as well. Which also brings me to the AI point as well, where sometimes not the teacher's fault, but sometimes I also notice that students have tended to use AI. I mean, it's an obvious fact that many teachers are worried about students using AI. Because now a teacher can tell a student to do an assignment, say, write 1,000-word essay. And they just tell ChatGPT, write 1,000-word essay. And 20 seconds later, they have this in copy and paste, for example. And many educators have this issue. So they banned AI from schools, and a lot of schools want to just ban AI and they just completely ignore it. But me, as a person who's in Austin, I see the technological advancements such as Claude, OpenClaw. Some of you may have not heard of it. It is an agent that works actually in your computer. Students need to start learning this, and I realize there must be a way to help students learn and adapt to technology, as well as still being able to know how to write well. And how do you meld the two?
Excellent. I love it. Now, Max, for you too as well. I mean, genuinely curious about your experience. I mean, coming in also, from Belarus and your experience, and then coming here to the United States, 4 years ago, and I want to ask you before you answer the question, because I forgot to ask an important question is, number one is, Max and Almar, how did both of you connect in millions? So, well, I'll ask Max, what was that experience like?
We go to the same school.
Okay.
It's called the UTX, University of Austin. It's a new school here in Austin, Texas. So we are the part of the sophomore class now, but we used to be only the first freshman class ever at this school. So, and they had only 90 students at that time. So it was pretty like everyone know each other. So we just met and we became friends, and then we like started our journey in this. So that was yeah.
Excellent. Okay, good to know the way that you all connected. But Max, I want to ask you though, like, from your experience too as well, coming in from Belarus and coming into the US, and obviously, in 2022 when ChatGPT came out and of course started, teachers started to panic. And even still in 2026, we still see a lot of teachers panic, very much like Almar was describing, what they used to be able to assign to students as far as write me, a five page research paper, or write me a 3-page essay, things of that sort that could easily be put into a large language model, and then Almar talked a little bit about, feedback coming in a lot later, maybe not as just in time when you may have needed that feedback to prepare for tests and so on. So just kind of like you and Almar making that connection, I'm just curious to see what is it here within the United States education system that you saw also as well, and said, hey, you know what, let's see what we can do and let's see how we might change this for the best.
So I came here. It was my sophomore year in high school, and I did not really catch the hype around AI when I was in high school here. So I remember when ChatGPT came out, teachers did not really know about it. So they were like, okay, it's just another tool for doing whatever. So they didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But in my senior year in high school and my freshman year at college, there were tendencies that students will just so they struggle to write a sentence basically, And there is an interesting study they came out recently that our generation scored lower on the IQ test for the first time since 1800. So, which is so basically, and the paper itself blames EdTech, which is really interesting and kind of ironic because the paper says that um, EdTech is making it's simplifying stuff too much, and using AI, it's just making the situation much worse. Um, so, in my opinion, U.S. as a first country in the world, that if we want to keep keep up with producing a really smart generation, we must do something because it will not be better. It will be just any much worse than it was. And but the key here is using AI is to it is impossible to detect because students are not just copy paste stuff now. So they use AI detectors, they change sentences. So it is literally impossible to detect AI if a student is smart enough, I would say, to hide it. Um, so why don't we just use it? Because we have schools like Alpha who does that, and they show amazing, just amazing results because their students score a wonderful SAT and AP exams, and their students go to Stanford and Harvard and other Ivy League schools. And so Alpha showed the world that this approach works. So, in my opinion, and my goal is just to spread this approach to um, other other like private high schools first, and then to public high schools. But this will take time, obviously,
Yeah.
because they have a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah. Most definitely. Now,
Yeah.
I'm curious here, Almar, too, as well. I mean, let's talk about reading rooms a little bit. And I know that in doing so, you both, or as a team, went out and you spoke with teachers, which is something that is great. That for you all at such a young age, in finding this problem, like Max was describing, and now that we have these tools in our hands, now I feel like, for example, your generation, and even us, that I'm kind of like in that middle, but as the tech started taking off, but now we have tools that are so powerful that can help us find solutions to those problems that maybe took years to solve, or maybe people moved on and just said, nah, we just kind of like leave it that way. But you are leveraging that power of generative AI and talking to educators, before you build anything. So I want to ask you, what is it that teachers are telling you? Now, I know here in the podcast, we interview a lot of founders, we interview a lot of educators and so on, but I'm curious again because of your age and what you're trying to do. What is it that you're hearing from teachers as far as their needs?
Behind every classroom door, there's a story of patience, creativity, and the quiet power of shaping the next generation. Peel Back Education shines a light on these lived experiences, the real voices of educators on the front lines. Don't just subscribe to Real Voices, discover them, connect with them, and maybe even share your own too. Visit peelbackeducation.com to discover the stories shaping education and the people just like you living them every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. Uh, in the past month, we've interviewed about 30, 35 teachers already. And yeah, I've spent countless hours talking to teachers and hearing what are their worries. And another point you said that I completely agree with is that there has been a lot of technological advancements, but one thing that we've noticed is the way a classroom works. There hasn't been much invention or, it hasn't moved forward that much. And now we're at a flux in the world where things like generative AI are coming into the picture, where, I believe that they're so powerful, they must be used rightly. And if used rightly, they can benefit education and build, really great, a next really good generation, if that makes sense. But yeah, but talking to these teachers, one of the things I noticed is that each teacher definitely teaches differently. No one app, I guess, can fit every single teacher's needs. Some may want a dictionary, for example, and because reading rooms is around reading and writing, some may want a dictionaries, others may want just a global chat feature, and there's a lot of things. But what I did notice is that all of the teachers I've talked to really find the pain point with grading. I think every single one of them told me that this is really annoying. And I'm sure I'm not the first one to find this out. I'm sure that many other founders have. But to bring an example, I was talking to a teacher, I think 2 weeks ago, and she was telling me she works 60 hours a week grading. And when I was talking to her, I was thinking, that's literally the job of a CEO, and she doesn't get paid overtime for that. And especially when it comes to writing essays, this can be a lot difficult. One thing teachers have asked, though, is an easy way to help them would be to get rid of the basic grading tasks, such as helping them quickly check grammar, for example, or sentence flow, or format, or things that teachers would like to get rid of. But things that, well, rid of is not the right word. Say, efficiently reduce the time on, maybe is a better way to put that. But one thing they still value is being able to read every student's papers. Even if AI can definitely help them, let's say, see problems that are maybe more difficult for them, being able to have that personal touch with students is still very important. If that makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah, and there's more I
absolutely.
can say about it, but yeah, just let me know what you think.
Yeah, no. I wanted to add a little bit to what you were saying, and and I think there, with the way the news is, and so much that we hear about schools, it just seems like many times, um, I think we feel like teachers may not want to do their jobs or do them correctly, or they're trying to find easy ways to do those menial tasks and so on. And yes, in a way, it's like being resourceful, but trying to do it in a way like you describe. Every teacher that I've ever spoken with, it is important for them to still have that human feedback, that human approach, that humanness to teaching. And it's not that we want to just use all of these platforms to just run everything through it and then we just kind of sit back and automate everything. There is a point that, excuse me, there is a time and a place also for that, teacher led instruction, but it's about also allowing students to be able to have that discourse, to be able to have those discussions, to be able to put those tools in front of them where they can create and engage in that learning and create a product, very similar to what you all are doing right now, where you all had a vision, you had a discussion, you found a problem, and now both you and Max are trying to find a solution to some of these problems that you're hearing from teachers. And I think that one of the things that you mentioned too that I want to highlight is you're absolutely right as far as the classrooms are concerned. There hasn't been much of a change or innovation in how the instruction is delivered. Uh, there hasn't been much change or innovation in the way that class is delivered. And, even if you were to go into for example, just into a large language model or something to produce a picture, and you type in a classroom in 2050 or a classroom in 2080 or a classroom in the year 3000, I'm willing to bet that the majority of those pictures that it comes up with, you're still going to see rows. You're still going to see that traditional setting in the way that we see education today. Everything is in a row. You've got the teacher in the front delivering instruction, and there hasn't been much change. So I know that for a lot of teachers, sometimes it's that fear of change and that newness of the tech that they may feel a little overwhelmed. And that's why they kind of hold back a little on that. So I want to ask you, and maybe between you and Max can share, or an answer on this, is because I want to hear your observations. What are some of the biggest things that the teachers that you have spoken to are still very hesitant about when it comes to implementing generative AI in the classroom?
Mhm. Yeah, I'll share a little bit, and then I'll let Max also say what he thinks. I think from speaking to them, uh, one of their first worries, of course, is can I trust AI? I think most teachers still think AI can hallucinate, and I mean I agree with them, and that's why there should be certain guardrails and should be careful. I wouldn't believe fully in AI's answers all the time. I'd always question it. And that's something that, I mean, I would like to get into more is that fact of, I mean, where is AI good at and where do we harness skills such as critical thinking and connecting the dots between them? Uh, if we use things such as, if we harness AI rightly by putting in the right rubrics or knowledge maps, implementing specific things to target, it may help teachers, knock out things specifically that they would want, and it can even help them in that sense. Not saying it's always right, but most of the time it can actually empower teachers. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good point. Max, how about yourself? What are some of the things that have stuck out to you as you have been listening in on these conversations?
Um, I actually wanted to say the same thing. So, a lot of the main problem for teachers with AI, it's just they are not sure about how relevant it is with its answers. Um, and this is completely true. I mean, I faced a lot of hallucinations myself with AI models, so it's been pretty uh, consistent in the way that they are like releasing a new models, and they are actually better over the years. So, but it will be a problem always. So, in my opinion, yes, where reading rooms as a platform, it doesn't replace grading for teachers, if that makes sense. Because as Almar said, we also do not trust the AI, and we definitely don't recommend teachers to trust the AI in grading. So, but it can help make it even more personalized. So it may sound really ironic, but AI is so something artificial can bring a lot of humanity in grading, because if a teacher will see so um if AI will track how students write, and he will find some patterns which is really good at this. So I don't think it's even a question if AI can make a mistake in this type of tasks. So if there's a trend in student writing, it can also detect any deviations, like what are his strengths or weaknesses, and it can suggest a teacher how to how to help the student. And then it's just the teacher's work, we believe. So we're not getting into that, because here the humanity of teaching comes basically. So, and it depends on the teacher of how he or she will approach these suggestions. But these suggestions might, one, save time, and two, make it much more um, productive for students to learn. So he can learn much faster.
Yeah.
And I also believe that um, students, sorry, excuse me, teachers are not open to changes just because of the reason that you mentioned, actually, because the setting of the classroom did not change at all, and it will stay the same probably. And s- these tools like Google Classroom and Canvas, um, they don't really change things because they are just automating stuff, which teachers are open to. So they're not really close to just automate stuff. They're close to changing the setting of the classroom and letting students use tools um, that deviate from the common way of learning and
Mhm.
writing and reading.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is
No, and I wanted to add to that, and I'm sorry that I interjected, but I think I wanted to hit on some great points, which is very interesting, and especially with you both, being very young and coming up with this wonderful idea. But what I'm hearing is something that is very interesting that many times I think many adults in the rooms in these EdTech spaces feel like, we've got the answers, we know what it is that's going to happen, and so on. But to hear what you are sharing, both of you, is so refreshing that with what you are building, you're still considering that human in the loop, that it's not that you're trying to replace teachers, but you're helping them and reallocating their time to possibly be able to go in deeper with lessons. So you've got a great tool where it's going to help kind of with that feedback, but still, the teacher at the end is still going to give that personal touch to it. But like you mentioned, maybe there's let's say I come in and my teacher knows my writing. I've been doing very consistently, for the whole semester, but then all of a sudden, I either have a bad day, a bad assignment, or maybe I just didn't do very well. But to be able to, like you mentioned, find a pattern and say, hey, you know what, today, Fonz, like, there's a little, kind of a little alert or just something like, hey, maybe check in and see what's happening. So to be able to kind of give that feedback, it's something that is great and it's very useful because I believe Almar and I think both of you actually hit it on your comments is to be able to give that just in time support. And I think that's very important. And this is one of the things that I'm very appreciative of this conversation and what you're sharing is you're really focusing in on helping teachers reallocate. I don't want to say save time because there's always going to be something that's going to take up that time, but at least they can reallocate it to something else where, like I mentioned, they can go in deeper to a task. They can fix any misconceptions that may be shown and either do a small group or a little reteach and so on, but are able to continue with the flow and be able to share that learning, which I think is something that is fantastic. And and also, like I said, just hearing that you really care about the human aspect and the humanity of teaching, that you're not trying to replace it, which I think is something refreshing, honestly, to hear from two young men like yourselves, because oftentimes is we see on the news 4,000 layoffs, 5,000 layoffs because everybody's automating things and I think that's one of my big concerns too, is just that automation. Like Max, I wanted to share a little bit, like kind of insight with you is that when my previous school district started automating Google Classrooms, in other words, they were rostering everything ahead of time. And then all of a sudden, book companies show up and they tie everything to Google Classroom. Well, teachers just start assigning everything through Google Classroom. Everything gets graded and then it's like, well, I'm done because it did all the grading for me. But what I started noticing is that teachers weren't going back to review grades and see, hey, what's going on here? Do I see a pattern? Do I see something that might be happening? Do I need to do a reteach? So that's kind of that fear of automation. But Max, you hit it on the head that it's not about the automation. It's really still just kind of that additional support for teacher assistants in continuing to do the work and helping them, really just alerting them to any changes or any concerns that might be happening in the classroom. So I just really wanted to add to that because I'm getting blown away here. Now, Almar, I want to ask you now because I want to go in a little deeper and give you opportunities to share what it is that you're working on. Tell us exactly what reading rooms is so that way all our listeners and audience members can hear out what it is that you're working on and what the goal is. I know we've heard little bits and pieces here, but I want to know like what is the platform like? How do teachers interact with it? Students interact with it? And what is that end goal and vision for reading rooms?
Yeah, no, I would be glad to share it. And please feel free to stop me as I go if you have specific questions anywhere. Um, but a quick rundown is that reading rooms has two parts. There's a homework builder and a bunch of cool tools for teachers to utilize after that. So homework builder specifically focusing on reading and writing. We have a place where teachers can upload any PDF they want. For example, I will choose Hamlet, let's say, a teacher teaching English literature and Hamlet, and they can upload Act 1 of Hamlet, for example. And our system can take this context and use it to build out any custom homework that the teacher would like. So, for example, if they want reading comprehension questions, our system can build out these questions, and they can be based on something that teacher implemented or use our personalized learning system, which will map skills based on SAT, official SAT rubrics, AP rubrics, NAEP rubrics, anything basically the teacher wants. And it will target specific areas where students will have, struggles in, and will help them grow there. And what separates us, for example, from something like Google Classroom is that most questions in Google Classroom will be automated through multiple choice. However, I personally, even though I had an okay score on the SAT, don't really believe in personal multiple choice questions just because there's this factor of elimination where I got really good at saying, okay, well, this is obviously not that answer. Oh, this is 2. So I have two points. I'll guess this one. And often I'll be much more right. Whereas here we focus more on a CER, claim evidence reasoning answer, where students must show their logic and critical thinking, which is so important this day. And for example, most employees will name critical thinking as like one of the most important factors in, choosing who's going to work for them. So we really want to build that out in our platform. I forgot to mention, we also have an AI that will kind of guide students as they read. If they have any questions, I'll help them explain passages, things like that. And then we have a portion where students can write essays and also get, using specific rubrics, will get feedback from AI before they submit it. It doesn't mean that they have to follow the AI. They could argue and say, this AI is wrong. Teacher, please take a look at this. And then they review each other's papers. So that's like a quick rundown of kind of the homework system. And please feel free to ask questions because I'm sure there's a lot to it that I didn't explain. And then for teachers, because we have all this data, we can create a bunch of cool tools, such as a lesson planner. We can focus on areas where entire classes struggled in and utilize learning science techniques, such as active retrieval, all those learning techniques, and suggest teachers, hey, you should do this tomorrow's lesson because your students struggled here in the homework, for example. And then, of course, we have an AI, which a teacher can ask questions about to just understand that just the classroom environment and where their students are at, as well as a place where teachers, of course, will assign grades to the homework and send it to their LMS, such as Canvas or Google. So yeah, that's a quick rundown, but let me know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. This is great, and I really, it's very interesting to say this, but still, and please forgive me, but just because of your age, but how you have shown that you have done your due diligence and your research, especially mentioning CER, mentioning other pedagogies and things of that sort. I find that fascinating that it's not something like you're not giving off tech bros, because that's one thing that happens. And honestly, within my circle on LinkedIn, and, because we have seen what has happened, from everything from NFTs to cryptocurrencies, and we saw all of that hype and trying to get all of that into education, blockchain, and all of that, seeing so much hype. And then, of course, we see a lot of hype with generative AI, and then everybody's wanting to start something. But I must commend you for what it is that you are doing, because it really shows that you have done your due diligence in trying to really understand what teachers are going through on the day to day. And also because of that fear of the offloading, maybe offloading the writing, offloading certain content, critical thinking, and those skills. But what you're sharing is that this is not what it's meant to be or do. It's really to help teachers and help students in the end. So, Max, I want to ask you, is there anything that you'd like to add also as well?
Yeah, I would like to add two things. So the first thing is, during our journey and our development, we used to have this like a literal chatbot for students. So, and we were expecting students to just ask it questions, and we were expecting this to like drive student learning, because AI is usually better at asking specific questions about a reading. But we realized that it sounds good and it works on paper, but in reality, that it will not work for like 90% of students. Just because in order for a kid to formulate a question, um, he must first do the reading, second, kind of analyze it, sit with it, maybe reread some parts, and then ask a question. And in this case, yes, AI can generate a really great answer that will actually help student understand reading more precisely. Um, but we realized that this is a lot of work for modern kids, so kids will just not do it. And so also a lot of kids, they see reading as really boring. So what we've done is AI is actually implemented inside the reading, inside the PDF itself. So students can just literally just highlight a section in their reading and ask questions, and they're not type anything. So they are pre-generated explanations of how can I explain it. um, AI can explain the same sentence in modern language. It can provide the opposite point, or maybe the data, or any evidence of a claim. And this just makes things really quick. And our kids just really tend to like it, because this generation is just really they really like when everything is quick, as you can say. And this is something that we personally believe is how reading is gonna look like um in ideal world, for students to actually make it interesting and understandable. The other thing is the gamification. So during the debate or essay part, students are given arguments, and they have to argue for or against a statement. And so what a platform does is it takes the text, and then it creates like a story, basically a setting based on the story, and it assigns a role to every student. So a student will have to argue for or against a statement from a perspective of a character inside the reading, or there is no character inside the reading. For, let's say, for example, it's like an economics class, and usually economics papers, they don't really have characters. So the AI will just create a setting and create like random people, and assign like their beliefs. So this also helps kids understand other people, which is a really amazing life skill to just to get into other person's shoes and just to understand how he thinks. And yeah, like one of the examples can be, for example, in the economics class, let's say they're reading the Manifesto by Karl Marx, let's say, and there is a setting like you are a middle class, or let's say like a lower class working. Um, so you work in a factory, you have like three kids, and you work from salary to salary. How would you see Marxist views? Or if you are a bourgeoisie, you probably will not really like it. And so this kind of tension, which we personally observe, like students really like it. So when we tested the app, students were really excited when they were assigned the roles, and they were like, okay, like I have to argue from Machiavelli's point of view, which is uh, interesting, and not a lot of people agree with his views, but they have to argue from his perspective anyways.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. As far as especially that engagement, one of the things that I just want to share also with you is that I think one of the things that I have seen and observed is that there is no longer as much discourse or discussion within classrooms where students are giving a time to be able to speak and share working groups or just really be able to get their ideas out and learn from one another. So the fact that you have something that is built in where students are able to interact, like you mentioned, having a kind of like that mock debate and you're going back and forth, I think that is a great way and a great skill, not only for the classroom, but a great skill in communication for some of those skills to prepare the students for the workforce. So this kind of leads me to my next question. And I wanted to ask you, based on your experience, you guys are very, very young, you're really in deep with generative AI. So I want to ask you, and I'll start with Almar first, and then we'll go with you, Max. Is Almar, I want to ask you, what would you say right now would be the most important skills that matter for students to learn now or to prepare them, or really like they're living through this AI world that we see right now, in your experience?
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg Smash It, I mean App Smash It with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, there's a lot of thinking to go into that. I would say me being at a university in Austin, Texas, it's not Silicon Valley, but it's a large hub where there's a lot of tech bros, like you said, entrepreneurs. I spend, 20 hours a week just trying to stay up with AI, and I still feel behind. So, and one of my concerns, I'll go through my personal life, is that I grew up in a classical academy, and it was really beneficial to read those books, debate philosophy, round myself in these historical knowledge and help me learn these specific skills. One thing that was missing was technology. And so when I came to UATX, which was less than 2 years ago, I did not know what the word startup meant. And me coming into this was a massive wave, a massive learning curve, which I mean, I'm still learning. I still see a lot that I do catch up on, but I fear for other students who are still in 10th, ninth grade, where their schools don't allow um, as much technological, I guess, advancement or being able to play with technology, where they will join the workforce. And we already have robots walking around, and they will hit such a large learning curve compared to mine that I fear that they may be stuck. It's very hard for them to grow. So I believe that being able to be immersed in technology at a younger age, not saying not saying elementary. I mean, when you get into high school, you start actually learning about how to use it rightly, how to use AI, for example, rightly. What are the benefits? Being able to learn how to click well on the computer. I think this is necessary, especially when the workforce is hiring AI literate people at a 30% wage premium. I mean, it raises the bar. I would say it's the number one skill. The second would be critical thinking. Uh, what makes a human different than an AI? An AI is just like I was talking to a headmaster today. He told me that AI is like a library, and I would agree with that because AI is a very good place to find knowledge. It can help you. It can also help you do things like do calculations. I mean, it's very beneficial. But what will separate you is your logic and your reasoning. And that's what makes a human different than AI. Can you connect the dots? Whereas AI will average things and generalize. Where will you find the thing that makes the difference in the world? And I think those two skills, critical thinking and AI literacy, together will make a very strong person, whatever field they go into. So that would be my take on it.
Great answer, Almar. How about you, Max? What are your observations and what are your thoughts as far as those important skills that students should be or should have in this, tech advanced world that changes from day to day?
Actually, my worldview, it really aligns with Almar's here. So I would just add that in terms of critical thinking, it actually goes to our conversation earlier because humanity will be really a really valuable skill. Is to just speak with people, connect with people, talk to people, and you probably will not be an interesting person if you will not read from your childhood. So it's just goes like a snowball, basically. Um, Students read much less. They will probably be not really good at communication skills, and they will lose this humanity as in critical thinking, as Amar described. So, and this can lead to really bad consequences in the future. Also, I mean, this is like a little bit out of topic, but obviously manual work will be really valuable because we will always need like technicians and these type of jobs. I don't think AI will replace it in like the next 20 years, I think, or 15 years.
So,
But I know people who think differently about that, but this is just my opinion. And yeah, I agree with Almar on a lot of these things. Yes.
all right.
I'll say this way.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to ask you both one last question. And so, since 2022, now 2026, going on 4 years, schools have been still trying to figure it out. There have been maybe some schools that have had some success as far as implementation of certain platforms or especially training of teachers and so on and usage for students. But of course, there's still a lot of pushback, a lot of districts that are very closed because of that fear of the technology, that fear of change. So I want to ask you, and I'll start with Max first. and just maybe take a little bit of time to think about this, is what would be the best advice that you can share with a district leader, a decision maker, as to why they should really move forward with some sort of obviously AI implementation, digital learning skills, and things of that sort? What would your best advice be to them?
Be to be open to new technologies, but also have a critical thinking abilities on his own to not let just really trashy EdTech to enter the classroom, because there are a lot of platforms that are just ChatGPT wrappers or like the Chrome extensions type of things. And we believe that this is just disrupts the classroom and teachers like and teachers approach to educate students. So be open, but also be really sensitive to kind of, because AI, it is really dangerous but really useful tool. And as a district leader or like a school director, I think you must take a sort of like a responsibility for students to not just let them use AI completely, and to also not fully um, fully ban it, because as Almar described earlier, this is not a great solution. So I
Excellent.
would
All
say,
right.
yeah.
All right. Good advice. Almar, how about yourself? What would be some advice that you would share with district leaders who maybe are still very hesitant to move forward with AI implementation?
I want to add to Max's point about being open, as well as I'd add the second point is make sure the tool you're buying adds value. I think it's redundant, but I did notice I was talking to a couple teachers and they were telling me that, yeah, I have AI tools, but they don't really help, or they're very useless, so I don't know how to use them. So, I mean, it could be also the EdTech company's fault, is that they never taught teachers how to use it. But yeah, make sure it adds value, I guess. Don't just choose AI for the hype, I
Right.
guess would be a good way to put that. The other one to add to Max's point is, I know that a lot when the dot-com boom happened and we had a lot of EdTech apps also fly into the sphere, many schools also jumped on those. And the EdTech sphere, boom, like crazy. And then years down the road, we dropped billions of dollars and we're below the 1800s IQ score. This is a big question, like what happened? And I would say that I completely understand why many headmasters just completely don't trust AI or don't trust EdTech, because looking at the data, it's like none of it has helped. But I would bring to you, for example, Alpha School. Not sure how many people, how much of the audience have heard of it, but a quick rundown of the school is that they are very bullish on AI. They use it in tutoring, they use it in AP courses, they use it their core classes. It's very, they're very run with the system. And if you look at their scores, they are in the 0.01% of schools in the nation. And so students there have built multi-million-dollar companies younger than I am, which is insane to think about. They've made massive followers. They have eighth, AP, SAT scores. So looking at their data, it proves that yes, you can use AI if it's done rightly. Just make sure that the way you do it adds value. And that's our hope through reading rooms, is that will hopefully be able to do the same thing in ELA.
Excellent. Wow. Well, Almar, Max, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I've definitely enjoyed every bit of it. Just to hear two young men, being in this space, and to me, just that hope now that hopefully all our audience members are able to see those that question, should we ban AI? Should we not? What if, critical thinking is gone? And with what you've shared with me and the work that you've done and finding a problem and now working on a solution, because now you have tools that are readily available to you that are very useful, that are able to guide you through this space and what you're trying to build. I mean, to me, that's just like, wow, that really shares some hope. And just the fact too that you also continually stated that it's not about replacing the teacher. It's not about replacing that human touch. It's just an add-on, a complement to what teachers are already doing great in their classrooms. I mean, you are very mature, you as and very wise beyond your years. So I really want to thank you for sharing your journey, sharing your vision, sharing your thoughts and your ideas on this show, because I think for our audience members, they're definitely you're gonna be able to take away a lot from what you shared. So thank you. And before we wrap up, Almar, we'll start off with you. If any guests, I'm sorry, if any audience members or anybody that might be interested in just getting in contact with you, with Max, or what would be the best way that they might be able to contact you?
I think, thanks also for bringing that up. I think the two best ways would be either through my email or LinkedIn. I think I send to my LinkedIn. You can just message me. I'm I respond very well there. And my email would be just almartashenko@gmail.com. So just my name. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure we link that in the show notes too as well. And Max, how about yourself? Is there a way that audience members might be able to connect with you?
Yeah, actually the same thing. Yeah, just LinkedIn and my email will work. Yes.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we link that in the show notes. That way, all our audience members that are listening to this episode that would love to connect with you, or just hear more about you, your work, or maybe contribute to what it is that you're trying to do, they can go ahead and connect with you. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. But before we wrap up, and I'll kind of make a little cut here. I don't know. Were you able to see those questions that I always ask my guests? I put it there in the show notes. So I don't know if you had some time to think about those a little bit.
I didn't tell Max if you could give them
Yeah.
that. Was
So
my
yeah.
fault.
So it's okay. Don't even worry about it. So here, we'll just make a little cut here and I'll come back to this. So Max, what I always do is I always end the show with not necessarily rapid fire questions, but 3 questions. So the first question is, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So we know for a superhero, for let's say Superman, kryptonite was his weakness. And so I want to ask you, what in the current state of education would be your kryptonite? Like, what makes you weak? What, like, in other words, like you seen this practice or something, you're like, oh, like it just really, it hurts you. It hurts your heart and your being in that sense.
Okay.
Question number 2 is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, maybe we'll put it there on I-35 in Austin. If you can have some big billboard right there, what would your billboard have on it and why? So it could be a quote, it could be whatever it is that's on your mind that would be that you're just like, hey, this is what my billboard would say. And the last question, Max, would be is, if you could trade places with one person for a day, who would that be and why? So I'll give you a little bit of, trade. Who would you trade places with for a day? So maybe you may think, okay. So I'll give you a little bit of time on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the routine and I'll start with Almar first, and then we'll go with you. Okay, Max?
Okay.
All right, perfect. Here we go. All right. Well, we'll definitely make sure that we link your contact info in the show notes so all our audience members can go ahead and connect with you with the work that you're doing and maybe contribute to the great things that you're doing. But before we end the show, I always love to ask these last three questions to all of my guests. So, Almar, I'll go ahead and start with you. As we know, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So for Superman, kryptonite is what weakened him. So I want to ask you, Almar, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
I would say something that makes me weak or hard to bear. It would be when students are not able to get their feedback on time. I think that's something that I I personalize with, or I personally feel pain in when students don't have the right materials to continue class.
All right. Good answer. Good answer. Good answer. All right. Max, how about yourself? What would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
I would say a reading that doesn't really make sense to me. A something that is really difficult, or like a real difficult topic, or really different, like a really difficult, maybe, or maybe. Can I start again?
Yes, yes, of course.
So, for me, I think it would be the text that is really difficult or just doesn't make sense to me. So, for example, if the wording is really old or really complex, that would just piss me off, actually. Yeah. So I don't really like that.
All right. Good answer. Hey, being honest and there you go. Hey, this is what I love, just a genuine, authentic moments. So if you notice, teachers, if you listen, I know we do have to read some of those texts, but at least we got to make sure that we have a great understanding of that. So I love that. All right. So Almar, coming back to you. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
I would say make sure you know how to write well, because you can't write without thinking, and critical thinking is what will keep you well in today's economy.
Oh, good answer. I love it. So see, bringing in that critical thinking, it's not going to go anywhere. All right, here we go. Max, how about yourself? What would your billboard have and why?
I think it would be don't be afraid of change, because change has been a critical factor of human evolution throughout thousands of years, and it will be.
That is a great answer. Don't be afraid of change. I think that's a message that can resonate with so many of us, and especially during these times in education and ed tech, with technology moving. So, it's a great, great billboard. All right, Elmar, last question for you is if you could trade places with one person for a single day, who would that be and why?
I would like to trade places with Marcus Aurelius. Uh, it's kind of out of the blues, but he wrote one of my favorite books, Meditations. I just want to see his lifestyle, the people he's around, and just glean from all of that knowledge that he put in the book. Yeah, just really interests me. So.
All right, good answer, Elmar. All right, how about you, Max?
I would change places with Lev Tolstoy. He's my favorite author ever. He's no longer alive, obviously, but yeah, that'll be my drink.
All right, excellent. That's wonderful. Well, gentlemen, again, it's been an honor to have you here. I have really enjoyed this episode. I have really enjoyed your insights, your vision, your thoughts, how you're processing all of this and seeing it in this perspective, and the perspective of somebody obviously a lot younger than me who is really in it, and not only as a student, but also now as, creators and founders of reading rooms. And so this is to me an honor. And, This is what it's all about, just amplifying a creator, founder voices like yourselves. And I wish you the best in the rest, in anything that you do from here moving forward with reading rooms. And you, as a guest of my EdTech Life, you always have an open invite. So next time you may have an update or something big is coming up or anything, you could always feel free to reach out, and we'll more gladly have you back here so you can be a guest and share all the great news with all the world. So thank you so much for your time. And for our audience members, thank you very much for all of your support. We appreciate, like we mentioned, from the bottom of my heart, all the likes, the shares, the follows. Please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 356 wonderful episodes that we have. And I promise you, in every episode, you will find some knowledge nuggets that you can sprinkle on to what you are already doing great. And again, a big shout out to our sponsors, Book Creator, Eduate, and Yellow Dig, and also Peelback Education. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you. And until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.